Hello, welcome to PM Express here on the JoyNews channel. My name is Evans Menson. Tonight, disbanding vigilante groups, the political irony. And there's a lot to go through tonight for you here on the show. Vigilante groups in Ghana, there are so many of them that indeed it's becoming, as some have described, a national security crisis. Why? Because if you look at what we've seen over the last few years, we have 15 political vigilante groups so far and counting. Now, this tells you a whole different story about why this is a crisis. 15. Let's break it down. It appears the two main political parties have their own vigilante groups, and it ranges from, if you look at Azoka Boys, and this, by the way, is the NDC's vigilante groups. The Azoka Boys, we're just listing all the 15 that we managed to find based on our own research. Azoka Boys, Borga Bulldogs, and their names are fascinating. Borga Bulldogs, Invincible Forces, Bamba Boys, we have the Kandahar Boys, we have the Aluta Boys, we have the Nima Boys, we have the Salifu 11 Boys. What's that all about? We also have names like Zongo Caucus, we have the Veranda Boys, very popular, Supreme Mahama Boys, we have the Delta Force, very famous one, of course. We also have the, pardon me, the Hawks. And then we have the Badariba Boys. Fascinating names. Now, the political parties have managed to sort of group these various groups that had come up for themselves. For whatever reason, we're interrogating tonight. Bazooka Boys. Interesting names I've told you about. Let's look at the National Democratic Congress and the various vigilante groups that they have formed and affiliated to them. Let's look at, say, a group like Azoka Boys, mainly in the northern region. The Hawks, we've seen them emerge in the Ashanti region. The Supreme Mahama Boys, allegedly affiliated to the NDC. The NPP, they have far more vigilante groups than that of the NDC. They have, you know them, Delta Force, you have Borga Bulldogs, you have Invincible Forces, Bamba Boys, the Hawks, the Kandahar Boys, and Aluta Boys, 6 of them for the NPP. So clearly, there are others as well operating in the gray areas. Bazooka Boys, the Badagriba Boys, Nima Boys, etc. All these also operate in their own realm. Now, let's look at the damage these groups have done over the years. This serious damage they've done over the years. In 2015, for example, when this became such a big matter, MPP Borga Bulldogs clashed with the Azoka Boys in the Talensi by-election. I'm sure you remember that. That was one of the most violent by-elections we've ever recorded in our history. In December 2016, even more chaos unfolded. MPP supporters took over the Tamamoto. You remember that? Chaos unfolding. In January 2017, even more chaos. Invisible forces entered the picture. They allegedly attacked the policeman at the Flagstaff House, caught on CCTV cameras. MPP youth lockup and NHIS office in Bodi, all in 1 month in January 2017. MPP supporters locked up public toilets in Koforidua, also unfolding. Now, if we move on to other years, just January, February, that same year, MPP Kandahar Boys tormented Tamale Teaching Hospital, causing a lot of chaos in the process. March 2017, Delta Boys attacked MPP Regional Security Coordinator. Remember that? That is what really started all this controversy surrounding what eventually led to the attack on the school feeding caterers. But also in April 2017, Delta forces stormed the court to set free 13 of their colleagues in the Ashanti region. Invisible forces lock up Eastern Regional NHI office, and it just goes on and on and on. You can find it all through, including what we've witnessed in the last few weeks, which really prompted the NCCE to hold a press conference. And we've tracked this all over. You have several cases uncountable that we'll be interrogating. But there's a political irony there. Both parties accuse each other of essentially forging or creating one vigilante group or the other, necessitating their own creation of their own vigilante groups. NDC General Secretary justified the creation of their own groups by pointing to what the NPP has done. So where do we stop? Now, the NCC did a bold thing for the very first time in a long time, hold a press conference and said, called out the president and this current government and said, listen, stop paying lip service to it, but also pointed to the NDC to also do same. We're going to be interrogating all of that today. We have both parties joining us, and we have the NCCE. How do we fix this problem and disband political hooliganism in our body politics? Stay with us here on PMS. When we return from the break, we'll be interrogating this and looking for the devil in the detail. And thank you very much. This is PMS. Let me quickly introduce my guest, because this is a full panel tonight and we're going to be delving into a lot of issues. So let's go straight to it. Josephine Nkrumah is a chairperson of the National Commission on Civic Education. You did a fantastic job with that press conference. You got caught up in the middle of the two giant political parties, yes, the umbrella and the elephant. I don't know how you've survived so far, but you have. Being here is testimony that you have survived. We'll be interrogating what you've done since that press conference. Also join us in the studio is a man who was at the helm of national security in this country as a deputy interior minister. James Agaga is of course, ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee, speaks for the minority on issues of defense and interior. Thank you, Mr. Agaga, for joining us here on PM Express.
Thank you, Evans, for having me.
Also joining us very shortly, and he's here, by the way, Mr. Agaga's chairman on that same committee, that is Seth Echampon. He is representing the governing party in Parliament on these issues of defense and interior. He will be in the studio very shortly. Let me start with you, Madam Nkrumah. So a press conference was held. You called out the current government and said, stop paying lip service to it. You got praise and criticism in equal measure. How did you feel when you woke up the next day and had the reactions on radio and television? And
for me, it was gratifying to note that the call had gone down. So whether for those who were criticizing or for those who were praising, at least the message had gone down, and people are beginning to speak up more than we've done in the past. And for me to be sitting here a week after this happened to interrogate the issue further seems to suggest to me that it's a conversation that we must necessarily have and which we must continue to talk about until we find a lasting solution to it.
Okay, so the criticism is that we've been talking about this for a long time. And your words were apt. Lip service, that's all we've been paying to this problem. What have you done beyond the press conference since that 2 weeks ago?
So beyond the press conference, what NCCE has done is to reach out to all the parties involved or the stakeholders. So we've written to the NPP, to the NDC, asking to meet with them and discuss the matter further and find a way of resolving.
Oh, so you've written to both major parties?
Yes, we've written to both major parties. We've also written to the smaller parties asking to meet with them because it is a national issue, so it goes beyond just MPP and NDC. We've also written to the IGP, we've written to the Christian Council of Ghana, Chief Imam, National Peace Council, the NMC, academia. We're asking to hold various meetings with them, probably culminating in a round table where we look at a collective way of resolving the matter. So that is what NCCE
has any of them replied?
No, not yet.
How long ago did you write to them?
All within this week.
All within this week. So this is in the last few days?
Yes,
okay.
All within this week.
When you wrote to the NDC and MPP, for example, what were you asking them to do? To come to this
We're asking to have a meeting with them to discuss this matter because it is a national security issue in our view. And it's important that they, as actors within the political space, have we have to understand their views on it, given that even within the two parties we have some that are condemning and then again some who are actually justifying why they should have it. For me, it suggests that even within those parties there is a split on what decision they should take. So it's even more serious than we thought, because if the parties don't have a collective view on this issue, then you have to be consulting different personalities and different groupings to find out why your stance and how we can reach a compromise. But with the ultimate objective that the political party vigilantes and the groupings must be disbanded. It is a prerequisite for our multi-party democracy to be sustained in this country.
I see.
Yes.
When you wrote to the IGP, I'm talking now about the duty bearers. I mean,
Yes.
the political parties, they do what they do. For the IGP, is it the same request to just talk, or you're demanding that he takes steps?
No, we
to
want to
crack down?
we want to talk with them. Of course, we can't just prescribe in letters. We need to speak to them. In the last few years, in our engagements with security agencies, we have been told that sometimes it's the political intrusions, in fact, that leads to the bad nuts that we have in the police, in the security agencies, and that in turn leads to the perceived lack of confidence in security agencies, and one of the main reasons why either party justifies why they should have their own internal security to protect them.
I see.
Yes.
We're going to take a short break. When we return, Mr. Seth Champon will join us, obviously. We already have seated James Agaga, and these are the two main parties, and they are, I guess, the main culprits in all this. The NCCE's project will be mainly targeted at getting these two, as you've heard, to sit, talk, find a common solution. So we'll hear their view on this matter. Stay with us here on PM Express. This is still live on PM Express. It's on the JoyNews channel. Let me start with you, Mr. Champon. As the chairman of the Parliament Defence Committee, obviously speaks for your party in Parliament on the issues of defence and interior. We've just heard Madam Nkrumah talk a lot about what you're doing, and I remember her press conference. She didn't mince words. We've heard this stated objective of trying to disband political groups for so long that it's time for action. Stop the talk and fix the problem. Lip service is the word that was used, and enforce the law. The president was on many occasions on platforms saying, I will ensure that the law of the whip is cracked. And immediately he speaks, a few days, months later, a worse one happens. So you admit that you've been very culpable in what now has been described as a national security issue, a national security crisis. You admit complicity in this.
Thank you very much, Evans, for the opportunity. Culpability is subjective, so I cannot sit here and say that I'm culpable. But let me move on to say that I really admire the leadership ability of Madam Josephine Nkrumah. We've had some useful Ghanaian personnel act in the capacity she occupies today. And for her to demonstrate such leadership, she deserves some admiration. And I admire her for her posture to put us on the conversation table like we are having now. And for me, this is the way we build a nation. And we should all be mindful that there is one unitary state, which is a republic called Ghana. And whatever any person does, you do it at the detriment or at the growth of this republic. Evans, Seth Champon, Madam Nkrumah, James Agaga are Ghanaians. And any person out there who thinks that because we are having an enterprise and we put ourselves into it and vehicles clothed in partisanship, so you will do anything and get away, please listen to me clearly. Ghana is moving on. Ghana is waiting for no person. Nobody will be protected. Nobody will be shielded. We're going to ensure that the right things are effected. James is my brother. He sits next 2 seats away from me. He knows when I speak. I speak calmly, but I'm firm. I'm not going to. If anything comes our way and we would have to debate it, we'll have to push it, we'll push it. let no person think that they are going to take the apparatus of state for a ride. Yes, we are Ghanaians. Truly, people, per their own modality and the way they think that they would want to demonstrate show of force, have christened groups into names.
Your party has Christian groups into names. You own these groups. 6 of them, as we illustrated on the before we started.
I loved your litany when I was watching it from the screens, and I said, yes, that's good report. You're chronicling stuff. But for me, that is not the reality. The reality is that people would work, people would do stuff. It is up to law enforcement to crack down the whip. And where I come in here is that how do we place leadership? I'm glad that we have an administration that sees that, yes, this is a challenge on the state. And it is not just vigilantism. I'll give you a bit of a scenario. When Boko Haram started in our next door, Nigeria, everybody felt it was just a particular community within a state. But in no time, it spread like wildfire. Arab Spring started up in the Maghrebs, and everybody thought it was just for one state in Tunisia. But at the end of the day, you saw what happened in
so why
those
don't you
communities.
disband
So that
these
is why I'm
groups?
happy that you invited me this evening for us to talk about. You cannot just disband people by sitting on sets like this.
But you haven't taken steps as a party. You are the chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee. You admit it's a national security issue. Have you recommended to your party and said, let's disband these groups, which is really what the call has been from the beginning?
The party has no power to disband them.
Why? Because they own
the
these
party.
groups.
They own. They don't own. We don't own.
The party comes and says, these are our people.
James, don't let me walk away. The party do not own it. You understand what ownership is? The party do not own it.
The invincible forces?
There are people who believe that they want to be christened in such particular tags and operate in that manner. The party do not own them.
Invincible forces?
Nothing. We do not own them. Look,
They don't work for the party?
James, you invited me here in my capacity
As a chairman of the Defense and Interior
and
Committee.
as a representative of the people of Vimprice constituency. In Kwewu, that is statutory, legitimate. There is no NPP person who will stand up and tell you that invincible forces, Delta forces are from here or they are from there. If there were, I would have them in my constituency.
You've had party
because I
people.
have NPP in my constituency.
But you've had
my
your
concern,
party people come on radio and say that.
No, whoever says that and says my party person, if he comes with an identity, an official identity, and claims so, then I'll go after the person. Then I'll get the law because then I have an identity. That is why I see it as a national security problem, which you would have to point to and look and address.
Let me bring in your colleague.
Right.
Mr. James Akaka.
Evans. Well, I'm surprised that my chairman sits in this studio and disowns political vigilante groups which are clearly affiliated to his political party, the MPP. I mean, look, there's a saying that if something works in a particular manner or talks in a way that resembles the actual thing, then that is what it is. Look, the MPP has clearly demonstrated over the period that they own the Delta Force, that they own the invisible force. And why not? When ASP Nanka Bruce was brutally assaulted at the seat of government, the Flagstaff House, in the full glare of soldiers, why there was a video footage, why was he not arrested and prosecuted? Why? Clearly, he acted with the tacit approval of his paymasters, the MPP, now in government. And that is why that gentleman was able to, should I call him a gentleman, he was able to get off the hook. Take the example of the group, the same Delta Force, which attacked the court in Kumasi. In fact, they had earlier attacked the regional security
arrested,
liaison officer.
Sent to court, prosecuted.
They stormed the court,
and
attacked,
convicted.
attacked the judge,
Yeah.
were let off the hook initially.
Arrested.
As a result of public outcry, they were caused or induced by their own party to surrender in exchange for some form of protection.
No,
I think the result of the prosecution settles the matter. Yeah, but the leniency with which they were dealt with,
but you can't
leaves much to be desired.
On the MPP and the government. This was a court of competent jurisdiction delivering a verdict on an issue that had come before it.
Evans, you know what?
You're not suggesting that the MPP should have controlled the verdict.
Evans, you know what? People in MPP party callous were spotted at the courtroom. And even before then, there were rumors that they would be fined. And monies had been mobilized to pay for the fines so that they would walk scot-free.
What are you suggesting?
So the point I'm simply trying to make is that if my chairman says that the MPP or he denies ownership of the vigilante groups affiliated to the MPP, I think we are not making a conscious effort to resolve what has assumed a national security dimension.
So my question to you, do you own the Azoka Boys and the other groups that we illustrated on the screen?
Evans.
That are also vigilante groups cause equal mayhem as we've illustrated
Evans,
over the years.
In 2016, when I was Deputy Interior Minister, we recognized the fact that the vigilante groups affiliated to our political party was becoming a threat to national security. So at that time, conscious steps were taken to disband all vigilante groups affiliated to the NDC, including the Azoka Boys.
But Azoka Boys still exist today.
I am speaking on authority.
In 2018.
I speak on authority, Evans, that there is no group today known as the Azoka Boys. That group was disbanded.
No, but what you're saying contradicts your own party's general secretary, who 2 weeks ago granted an interview to on radio and said, we have the Hawks and that... say again? And the Dragons. Yeah. And the fact, and he says, we need to have these because the MPP has theirs, and that you would actually grow them, nurture them, keep them for your own protection.
Evans, I took you back to 2016.
Yes.
And I made the point
that as you speak today, there are no vigilante groups
Azoka Boys.
Only Azoka Boys.
Remember,
so you only disbanded Azoka Boys.
Remember in 2016, the Azoka Boys was the only known vigilante group affiliated to the NDC.
True.
And in the aftermath of the Talensi by-election,
true,
we took it upon ourselves to address the situation, which was, I mean, very threatening at the time.
Do you remember your defense minister saying to us, the violence beget violence?
That was in Talensi, but I'm talking about the aftermath.
Yes, but I'm saying
in the aftermath,
your defense minister justification of what happened is that violence begets violence.
Evans.
So where did you have?
Evans,
when did you?
Evans. After the by-election, we all sat down and came to the realization that it was time to disband all political party affiliated vigilante
so
groups.
Do you have the Hawks?
And I'm saying that I'll come to that.
Yes.
I'll come to that. I want to establish and underscore the point that the Azoka Boys was disbanded.
So they have been disbanded?
Absolutely.
So there's no Azoka Boys?
Absolutely.
So I can call Ms. Azoka
I am speaking on authority.
Okay.
Because at that time, we clearly demonstrated how law-abiding we were. I mean, instructions were given, the directive was given, the IGP met with the political party leadership at the time, including the MPP, and admonished all of them to disband their vigilante groups. Why he took those steps after Talensi was that the MPP, Invisible Forces, if you recall, had attacked their party headquarters, hounded out the general secretary from office, and we had to deploy police at the party headquarters
to restore... This is Cabinet Japan, you mean?
Cabinet Japan, to restore calm and order at the MPP party headquarters. So we felt that moving into the elections, if something was not done, we're going to have a big problem on our hands. Thankfully, the NDC paid heed to wise counsel. Azoka Boys was disbanded. Now, even the MPP itself took a cue. Their vigilante groups did not misbehave. And so election 2016 was about one of the most peaceful elections we had in this country.
Because you took leadership.
Absolutely.
I see.
But after the elections, when we lost power, okay, the NPP vigilante groups which had gone underground became emboldened. Because after all, NDC had lost power. They were going to, hand over power. They were going to hand over power to the NPP. And so they became emboldened and started unleashing attacks upon attacks on state institutions. Facilities were ransacked. People were brutalized. And yet nothing was done.
Something was done, and not all the cases, nothing was done.
Look,
reporting what happened.
Look, the Interior Minister was before Parliament to answer questions. He gave us all the assurances. The National Security Minister was in Parliament. He gave us all the assurances that it won't happen again. The next moment, the vigilantes were, they were out there attacking.
But you haven't addressed my question. We illustrated that before we began. You still have vigilante groups today. The vigilante groups justified by your general secretary.
The emergence of the hawks within the NDC is a direct response to the refusal of the MPP to disband its vigilante groups.
This is a party that you said recognized that vigilante groups were a threat to national security, disbanded Azoka Boys, as you claim, and yet in 2018 you found the need to bring back another vigilante group, in fact 2 vigilante groups. You see, what happened to that desire to deal with a security threat back when you were disbanding the Azoka Boys?
The General Secretary of the NDC made conditional statements.
That?
And he clearly alluded to decisions taken as far back as December 2016 for the 2 major political parties to disband the vigilante groups affiliated to them. Now, the NDC clearly took steps to disband. The MPP, after chalking victory in the 2016 elections, allowed its vigilante groups to revive themselves and to start attacking. So our members started having a certain feeling of insecurity. Look, the right to self-defense is one that cannot be taken away from any man.
Mr. Gaga, you've just painted a picture of the NDC as a party that showed leadership in dealing with the problem.
Yes.
As a party that was different from the NPP in dealing with this problem.
Yes.
And yet you're saying that this time you want to become like the NPP you criticized just a few minutes ago.
No, Evans, make no mistake. Not too long ago, the national organizer of the NPP, when he was asked the direct question whether or not the NPP will disband its vigilante groups, you know what his response was?
What did he say?
He said, no, they won't disband. They would reorientate. They would reorient. If you have that kind of response, what do you expect from the political opponents of the NPP? So the statement the General Secretary of the NDC made was a direct response that if the NPP refuses to disband, our people have organized themselves and will defend themselves whenever they are attacked.
Just I'll come
Those
to you
were
very
the
shortly.
statements he made.
Seth, it says if you don't disband, they won't. In that sense, that's the message.
I'm sad. I'm sad as I listen to my brother James. I'm sad in the sense that in one breath we are not law-abiding and we do not disband. In the next breath, because we are not law-abiding, they will also not be law-abiding. We cannot live in an anarchist state.
You agree you are not law-abiding?
We are law-abiding. I stand on my definition of us being law-abiding, and I mean it. And I say this to the point, until we all veer from our political colors, I could have gone the trajectory my brother went. 10 years ago, that is quite recent, 10 years ago, when I had been elected, I had not been sworn into Parliament, I had been elected almost 10 years ago, when I had been elected as a representative of my people. This country experienced a presidential election marathon So the determination was to be decided at Nsoko, which is time.
That's 2008.
2008, that's a decade ago. When all that happened, there is history. My political party decided we're not going to contest, so we went away. But when we came to town, the capital where the commissioner would have to call the elections, the General Secretary, who today prides himself as the man who is speaking to who is vigilante or not vigilante, and why his political party is proud to have vigilantism, dressed in a very warlike apparel, sat and pulled youth with him and drove to the Electoral Commission premises and demanded that the election be called for them because they had won the election. Unfortunately, at the time, what signals were we sending to the people? People would come up with a mantra that history repeats itself. No, history never repeats. It is people who rather try to repeat history. And when we do that, we are sowing seeds of what we expect to happen in the future. I'm a child of faith, and I'm a Christian. The Bible tells us that if you sow a wind, you reap a whirlwind. If we do not attempt to look at this canker which is eating this state with vigilantism and we play partisanship with it, we'll go nowhere. That is why I sat here. It isn't that I don't know. In my constituency, when I go for campaigns, I have young men who like me, who follow me, who have the strength to cause mayhem. But it is who is leading them, who carries the responsibility, who must tell them that, hey, I don't want that, I dislike that, and I don't like that to happen. This very year, our former president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, was in Kumasi not too long ago, very recent, to organize what his political party has offered them the opportunity to do, to showcase who wants to lead a political party again, and he's brought himself up to lead a political party again. He went into a constituency, Asawase, Asokore-Mampong. Similar push and pull from vigilantism occurred there.
Yeah.
I'm saying this to the point of national security threat.
So what do we do about
So
it? What
that is where
you're committed to
that
do
is where
about it?
I say that law enforcement must happen. James put it.
But the law
that
enforcement we've seen has failed us.
No, it hasn't failed us.
Over the time
no,
on this
hold on.
matter.
Evans, just a second. When we had issues in my political party's office, and when he was in office, law enforcement was able to bring order to my political establishment. So there was some enforcement there. Today, when it happened in Asawase, we brought in law enforcement. There was some establishment there. So we, himself and me, should put our hands together and support law enforcement. So we strengthen them, we bolden them to do what the law, myself and him, have sat by powers of our constitution to create for our sustenance in this country. They who enforces it, we should embolden them to enforce
Madam
it.
Nkrumah, you agree with
So that we suppress everybody.
I think
that is why I said I was sad, because when we have to throw at each other, he will throw at me, I'll throw at him. But I think we have come to a point where we have to see the devil. They said the devil is in the detail. And we have to look at where the trouble is. The trouble is that human beings, wherever they find themselves on earth, if they have the will to do a business and there is a way, they will pursue it. People will definitely pursue vigilantism. But how do we, who have seen that vigilantism brings a state, a republic like Ghana down? Because we've seen it around us. It has happened next door.
all over the continent, in fact.
Necessarily. Come to our sub-region. I don't want to go too far. Look, James and I have seen a lot. We just came from Nigeria not too long ago. He knows what is going on in Nigeria when it comes to national security threat. And so for me, when I see vigilantism everywhere, I'm alarmed.
Yeah. I mean, he paints his group,
No.
very
That
gloomy
is,
picture.
I don't begrudge him.
We
No, I don't begrudge him
need
because
to understand.
that's why I said I'm enjoying him in opposition.
Yeah.
When he was in the executive, his narrative was different. Today, my back is against the wall, and I want to see success, and I'm happy. That's why I said I admire the leadership of Madame Nkrumah.
Now let me bring her
because
in on
Madame
this.
Nkrumah, in her tenure and under an administration of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, there is this freedom for everybody to express themselves and be assertive. And I'm glad
Are you suggesting that this would have happened?
Oh, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just speaking my mind. I'm a citizen of this land.
Okay. Madame Nkrumah.
Well, of course, I think one of the things we're seeing here is that vigilantism has been the sort of bane to our multi-party democracy. And we can only solve the problem if we look at it collectively. And so for me, vigilantism, I'm looking at it as competitors to the state actor, which is the police. And we cannot have two of the same, or two of such in our democracy. The Constitution establishes the Ghana Police Service, and it is to the Ghana Police Service that we turn to for law and order, for the protection of every citizen of this country. So that justification, in quotes, that we have to have our own group of people who protect us because we don't have confidence in the state actor is wrong. Rather, we should seek to empower the police to do their work effectively. But then again, you have
but wouldn't that be burying our heads in the sand? If indeed the police isn't doing the job that will give us confidence, shouldn't we fix that first?
Of course, we need to fix.
Because in fact, in this country, we've seen when politically the police have shied away from acting when the incumbent people do stuff.
This is why we're seeking to meet all the parties involved. We need to interrogate, why do we have this perception that there's no confidence in the police or the police are not doing their job? Because when they've been called upon to do their job in some of the incidents that they have alluded to, indeed the police have stepped up to the game and they have in fact carried out the job and established or re-established law and order in those places where incidents of vigilantism took place. So for me, it tells me that the police have the capacity and they have the competence to do their job. The question we have to ask ourselves is, why do we have that perception of no confidence in our law enforcement agents? Well, like I said earlier on, I think it has largely to deal with the kind of manner in which some intrusions have gone into enlistment in the security agencies, and they say it. So when you have a certain group of people in the police force who were brought into the police force or were enlisted because of more or less political imposition, then you would have this situation arising that, hey, these are for the governing power. So if I have, or the governing party, so if I have any security breaches, if I go there, this is not where I'll find security. We need to have the integrity of the Ghana Police Service strongly stamped in the psyche of the people, which includes, of course, the political parties as well. So when we can all go to the police and enforce law and order, then we are arriving at a situation where there is no national security threat. So I'll ask my brothers who I'm flanked.
They were flanking you.
So it says they said that they were protecting me. I said, are you sure I'm not the buffer zone?
Yes. You feel protected?
No.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I have two gentlemen. I don't feel protected.
Yes.
What I'm saying is this. I think the way forward is for all of us to sit down and discuss this issue. Of course, if we stand here and we say, disband the groups, and of course the lips say, oh yes, we've disbanded the groups, which is what Honorable Akalga is saying here. And he said, you are saying, are you sure they've been disbanded, the Azoka boys? We need to properly find a way of dispersing them and interrogate. Why do we even have vigilantes? Yeah. What are their expectations?
I get your bit about discussing the thing, but if you listen to what Agaga had said,
yes,
and what, in fact, Asiodun Nkita had said also, they have they believe the incumbent party must take leadership on this because they are currently have the power. I'll come to you because there's a lot I want to interrogate with what you said earlier. But they believe if you have an incumbent party with 6 vigilante groups, right, they have more than the opposition party. That is the only reason why they've had the Hawks, and he said that, right? And so if the incumbent party with all the power will not disband theirs, why should they? What do you make of that argument?
Well, I make it that it's the same partisan selfishness that is going on here. Because if you think that the incumbent is not standing up to disband certain groups, it is your duty in opposition to continue to speak to that matter until we arrive at a decision. But to say that, okay, because you are doing this, I'm also going to do that, that is wrong. Where do we see an end in sight? We would not see an end in sight.
You think a vicious cycle then ensues?
It's just a vicious cycle we have on our hands. And that is why I must commend Joy for speaking at this time, continuing this conversation. And I'm urging all of us to continue to speak about this until we can bring the parties together and find a lasting solution to this. Because it's not just this conversation that is going to end it. It is not what he's saying here, he's saying there, what you were saying. Everybody must speak up, because if it disintegrates, it's all of us who are going down. Yeah. It is not some of us. It's all of us who are going to suffer. 25 years after uninterrupted democratic governance in this country, is this the time that we want to see this? I think it's shameful. It's shameful at this time of our national history to have this thing rear its ugly head. It's been there, it's always been simmering, but now more and more we find that these groupings have become emboldened, and we have leadership in political parties who get up and justify this, who get up and actually condemn NCCE for this. And all we are saying is that we want to uphold the rule of law. Does it take rocket science for anyone to see that this is the natural progression for us as a country to go? Why should somebody say, no, I'm not going to listen to what NCC is saying? Who are you? Do you know how these boys have suffered to get us in power, and now you're saying
there are a lot of NPP executives and ministers who were on my show saying exactly that about your press conference. That you calling out and saying lip service is totally unfair, and that you probably found your voice. All of a sudden, where were you when this was happening under the administration, etc.? You've heard that.
And yes, NCC has always spoken against this. We've usually had press statements, and we have sought to engage political parties behind the scenes. In 2016, for instance, we had a lot of engagements, in fact, 40 engagements across the country with political party activists, the youth activists, to get them to understand that we are in a dispensation of democracy, of tolerance, so we ought to be law-abiding, we ought to respect the rule of law, and for them to use the appropriate statutory channels or legitimate channels in addressing their concerns and their grievances. So if you say that, no, why have you suddenly found your voice? We have now sought to bring the conversation to the fore, because we think that this time, if we don't, we don't amplify this statement, this cry out for vigilantism to cease, then we've reached the tipping point. Yeah. So it's not we have now found our voice, but now more than ever, it is critical for us to speak. So we will continue to speak. We will name and shame all the parties. We have named and shamed NDC. We have named and shamed MPP. We will continue to name and shame, and we'll continue to ask all Ghanaians to speak up against vigilantism in this
country.
Mr.
Gaga, the words that Madam Nkrumah used to describe the position that you've articulated here is political selfishness.
Well, Evans,
you admit that you've been politically selfish on this matter.
Evans, the seeming loss of voice, not only of the NCCE, but of other civil society organizations, and even individuals in this country, about political vigilantism, for me, was worrying. And so I want to seize the opportunity to commend Madam Josephine Nkrumah highly for the position she has taken.
Against your party and against his party and against your position on the matter. All he's saying is that stop saying that if they don't disband, we won't disband.
They are seeking to find solutions to a problem.
And you're making it difficult for the solution to be found.
How difficult is our position, Evans?
Your position is, if the incumbent party doesn't fix the problem, you won't fix yours.
So we took the lead.
Please, let her come in. Let her come in. Forgive me. Let her come in.
I want to ask you this question. It was on air when a member of NDC said, for every one member of our party that you attack, we will attack 4. Did you come out to condemn this? Did the leadership of NDC come out to condemn this statement? And when we had other personalities in the NPP come out to say, who are you to tell us to disband?
Yes.
They are people, they are there to protect us. Did you come out to condemn this? So, I mean, we're still at the same position.
That question, I demand answers to that question. First, yourself.
Well, Evans, my point is
simple. Did you come out to condemn?
Right from the word go, the NDC has always condemned political vigilantism in this country. I gave you the example of 2016 and the steps that were taken.
But those steps, you are telling me now, it's news to me that you're on the show.
Just Google.
You disbanded. In fact, it's news to me that you've disbanded as Okaboy.
Now let me explain to you.
Something that we'll be checking, by the way.
Let me explain to you what happened in 2016. I mean, if you recall, in 2016, for the first time, all presidential candidates were given security detail. Why do you think we took those steps? We took those steps because we actually diagnosed one of the reasons why there is political vigilantism in this country as mistrust for the security agencies of state. That oftentimes political parties argue that their leaders are not given protection by the security apparatus of state as compared to the kind of security the incumbent gets. So we took the initiative of ensuring that all presidential candidates for the first time were given security detail. So you saw them all over the place. I mean, sometimes you could even be misled by the sheer numbers of security personnel deployed at an opposition political party event and construe that to mean that the sitting incumbent government was having a program. But these were some of the steps we took. Unfortunately, when we left office, what did we see?
Okay, Mr. Gaga,
what did we see?
We shouldn't live in the past. I want us to move, because we just have a few minutes to run. Let's move to 2018. The problem still persists. The NCCE is here because we want to find solution to this. Thankfully, the two of you are in positions of power in Parliament. You can do a lot to move this conversation forward. As we're about to wrap up, let's talk about the solutions. What is it that Mr. Gaga, as a minority spokesperson on Interior and Defense, you are committing to do to help your party, one, disband, right? But moving forward, get a national conversation on this that eventually fixes this problem permanently.
Look, Evans, the root cause of political vigilantism in this country is the lack of political will in dealing with.
That is what I'm asking about. You're a politician. Do you have the political will?
We have demonstrated that will before.
I don't want us to talk about the before.
And we are prepared once again to act in good faith.
By doing what exactly?
By, of course, disbanding.
You are prepared to disband?
Absolutely, but this time around, we're saying
with
that
no conditions.
Unlike before, the ruling party should seize the initiative. They should show leadership, like we did in 2016, and would follow suit.
So that's conditional.
That's not conditional.
It's conditional. You're saying that if they don't do it, you won't do it.
We're saying they should show leadership. The political will and commitment should be demonstrated by them.
Can you state what you want to do without conditioning it on what the incumbent party does?
Look, we've all recognized one thing, that political vigilantism is dangerous for our national security. But how do we deal with the menace?
That is the question I'm asking you. You have the solution.
First of all,
you have the power.
First of all,
you have the will.
First of all, let the government now create jobs for the youth
Yeah,
Because
that is a long-term one. That is a long-term. We know that's a bigger conversation about fixing the root causes that
But you see,
make
Evans,
these people idle hands.
Evans,
yes.
I must point out something.
Please do, briefly, so I can get Seth in.
We must be mindful that we don't act in our bid to resolve
This
the
problem.
crisis we currently find ourselves in. We don't act unconstitutionally, because the freedom to associate is
It's
a
a
right that
fundamental
is
human right,
guaranteed.
yes.
But you see, when you exercise that constitutional right to associate, and in the process you commit crimes,
Yeah.
it is the singular duty of the security apparatus of state to be up and doing, arrest the perpetrators of the crime,
Yeah.
and deal ruthlessly with them in accordance with law.
Okay.
So far, there's been a lot of laxity on the part of the security apparatus of state.
Okay. So let me come to Seth. Seth, that same question, because we're just about wrapping up. As the chairman of that committee, what is it that you're committing to do tonight on this matter? And speaking now as a chairman of the committee.
No, James, we have allowed the security services to operate. Okay. When we had the court issue in Kumasi,
I don't want us to refer to the past.
Don't worry.
I wanted to, because we don't have time.
The recent happening.
Yes, people have been arrested.
The recent happening which
People have been
brought this
remanded.
matter. Yes,
we
people
know
have
that.
been-
I'm
the law,
saying.
the law,
that-
hold on a minute.
Yes.
The law is on course. That's demonstration of leadership in ensuring that these things do not happen. If we do not allow, listen to the president when these matters have occurred, and he has spoken to the nation. He has been categorical that law enforcement will take its course.
Are you saying that there's nothing more you can do?
No, there is more.
That's what I'm asking you. Give
That
me
is
that
why-
in
that's
a
why
few
I'm
seconds.
here.
Yes.
That's why I'm here.
But beyond that, in
We
Parliament,
need to offer,
formally.
wait a minute. We need to offer our people the assurance and the confidence that we mean what we say.
Okay.
So as we have allowed the laws to work, we will continue in our strength to ensure that the paths we are on will not depart.
Okay.
We'll ensure that these things do not happen again.
Will you disband the groups that we know exist in your party?
Oh, certainly we are not, like I told you, ownership is a matter which I cannot sit here.
Your
and
party
take up.
executives have owned them.
Some. I don't even know who you are talking
I
about.
can mention many names.
You can mention names, but until they come and accept here, James,
Okay.
you and I knows my
Okay.
word against your word.
Okay.
So I don't want to go into those things, but I want to state here and now that this is not Ghanaian.
Okay.
And we should not
End it.
allow this to stay with us.
Madam Kroma,
Everybody must speak
end it for
against
me.
it.
What would you say, having heard both sides?
Well, I would say that for the NCCE, we are committed to finding a solution to this. And we believe we can't do it on our own. We need the political actors on board. We need the security agencies on board so that we can collectively find a lasting solution.
Have you heard anything
to
tonight
this.
that gives you encouragement?
If there's one encouragement I'll get from them is to get commitment from them to say that now that you have demonstrated some adherence to the rule of law by ensuring that the last incident, people are actually being prosecuted for it. I want the parties
To continue.
We are not doing lip service.
No, you're not
We are
doing
really
Yeah.
working our
Yes,
talk.
but what I'm saying is that-
say, just run out of time on this. Thank you very much,
No,
Josephine
but please,
Nkrumah.
I want them to be able to gag those who come up and say, to call them to order.
Okay.
When your personalities in your party who have influence come in the public space, in the media, and condemn, those of us who are
call them to
fighting
order
against-
and condemn them.
call to order
Thank you very much.
and
That's
condemn
Madam
them
Josephine
publicly.
Nkrumah, the chair of the
Thanks for the
NCCE,
advice.
and
But
Seth
like I said,
Achampong,
we'll
Chairman,
work our
Parliament Defence Committee. James Agaga, former Deputy Interior Minister, Ranking Member, Defence Committee, who says they've disbanded Azoka Boys. Something we'll be checking in the northern region. My name is Evans Mins. Enjoy your evening.